Welcome to the Hay Kings podcast, brought to you by Crone, dedicated to hay and forage producers. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Mark Mendez, and Mark's out of the Central Valley in California, and we're going to hear about his story today. Welcome to the podcast.
We are out of Lemoore, California, which is about 30 miles south of Fresno, and we're also we're just below Hanford and Tulare, and so a lot of times guys understand this area as being called the HTV area. It's a large consuming area of hay. We have actually the largest dairy counties in the nation right here, the Kings, Fresno, and Tulare County. We produce more cheese here in the state of California, which the majority of it comes right here from this area than anywhere else. So it's a major hay player here. I think that this area really has a big effect on the market.
So tell us about your operation, and then we'll get back to the area that you farm in.
Well, my father, Eddie, started to haul hay in 1971. His senior year in high school, he bought an old truck with a buddy of his, an old 10-wheeler with a side loader, and they began hauling hay out of the field and moving it to dairies. And so that was really the start of Mendez Hay at the time, is what it has always been until now. Until about 2016 is when we became MMT Ag. And he really just became that link between the farmers and the dairymen here in the local area. At that time, all of his hay came here from locally grown farmers. And over the past few years, we have branched out and began to bring in hay from other places in the state and out of state. Really what we've focused on is just serving the local dairies here in this HTV area. And we've been doing it for a long time. So I grew up in the industry from the time that I could remember sitting on my dad's lap, hanging onto that big steering wheel in the old cab overs, and have watched the industry progress. I've always been in the industry. I never really left. I had a few other jobs when I was young, but all still ag related and trucking related. I've always watched very closely how these markets are affected and how just our whole region in both farming and dairying, because being in our position, we really get a good view of both sides, which is always, I thought, was a great place to be, to understand what everybody's really going through at times. So in 2003, I bought my first hay truck, began Mark Mendez Trucking, which has again turned into MMT Ag Transport and Trading. I do buy and sell hay as well, and along with other commodities, everything from almond hulls to basically anything that we can feed a cow to. So that's kind of what we specialize in, is buying and selling feed and then transporting it as well. So I have a fleet right now of 6 trucks that we haul hay with and commodities. We have flatbeds and walking floors and belt drives.
And how many dairies are you servicing?
That number has dwindled over the last 20 years. Definitely shrunk from what it was. But I think that's just kind of been the situation for everyone in this industry. We've all seen that reduction in the amount of dairies here in our area and all across the state. I'm sure the whole entire West, but we service, I'd say, somewhere between 40 and 60 customers.
Oh, okay.
Very regularly.
The fate of small 3-tie bales going to dairies, that's pretty well over and done with, right?
There are a few dairies that will still buy them if they come across a good deal or if it's the right type of hay that they're looking for. And then there are others that just completely refuse buying anything in a 3-tie.
Yeah, they want big bales.
Just for convenience, that's the way everybody's set up. Everything is, large here in our area. So large equipment, high herd sizes that really just, everybody's looking to save the amount of time, and with labor costs that have obviously spiked here in the state, as well as being a big effect of that.
Oh, I can commiserate with labor cost. Washington minimum wage, I think, is the highest in the country right now at $16.66. But that's really a West Coast phenomenon, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we get to pay overtime after 40 hours.
Yes. So that is a new regulation that just started here for the dairies. Most of agriculture had a little bit of leeway. I believe they were at 10-hour days. And now we are also on that 40-hour week. And so that's, I'd say, one of the biggest hits that the dairy industry here locally has had to take in quite a while. A lot of people don't understand what, $2 here or a couple hours of overtime change can do, but it's really huge. It has a massive impact on everybody's bottom line that's already harder and harder to keep in the green.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to talk about some of the changes you've seen in crop mixes, because you mentioned almond hulls. You mentioned bringing alfalfa in from out of the state. What has changed since you started doing this? And I know the easy answer is everything, but let's focus on those crop mixes.
Yeah, well, again, like you just said, the easy answer is everything. Everything. When I was a young man, we really saw that, dairies fed grain inside the barns. And as the cows were being milked, they fed only hay outside. The majority of what the cow ate was hay. And so, we probably had feed rates of anywhere from upwards of 10 pounds per animal, as high as 15. And now what we're seeing with the difference in the automation of feeding, the way that we feed, the advancement of the TMR, the total mixed ration, we have now brought in so many different types of feed, so many different byproducts like our almond hulls that we have readily available here in California, especially in the Central Valley. That is, in a lot of times, a direct replacement for hay. It might not be a complete replacement, but they can definitely
close.
Substitute a lot for it. Yeah, and so that's, I'd say, the biggest difference that we've seen, especially since our last big spike in prices over the early 2020s, is we have made it to where we just encouraged the industry to find other ways of feeding rather than alfalfa and all hays. So it's been a pretty big hit to our hay industry. I believe that we've seen the majority of dairies drop down to 4 pounds, some of them even 2 pounds per day of hay versus, 6 or 8 years ago, they were still around that 8 to 10. And so we've drastically reduced the amount of hay that they need to feed. Now, all of that is, of course, a supply and demand issue. We've seen cheap proteins over this past year. Our canola prices, our DDG prices are much lower than what they were when hay was higher as well. But that's just been also in addition to the fact of that dairies just don't need as much hay as they used to.
Looking to make a lighter footprint across your fields? Run Krone rakes. Available in working widths from 12.3 to 15.1 for single rakes and 18.8 all the way up to 62.4 feet in the twin and 4-rotor versions. Choose from multiple sizes and configurations to sweep across your field, gently lifting the crop into clean and boxy windrows. Ideal for the hungriest baler or chopper. Learn more at www.krone-northamerica.com.
I want to pull up the numbers here, and I think I can do this fast enough to be tolerable. I like the USDA data, National Agricultural Statistics Service. Here's your shout out for the day. Okay. And we're going to go to animals and products and livestock, and we're going to go to cattle because dairy cows are cattle according to this system.
Yeah.
I want to find inventory, and I want dairy cows. Cows, milk, inventory. There we go. And state. And I want California. And we have records. This is fun. We have records on how many dairy cows in California back to 1867.
Wow.
Yep. I want the 1st of January. 1,715,000 dairy cows, which is down about 5,000 head from last year. That's in California. So as you're talking about a shift from 8 pounds per head per day to maybe 2 pounds per head per day, that's 6 times 1.7 million. Well, that's 10 million tons.
10 million tons.
That we've lost in demand.
Yes.
Now, that's the total U.S. alfalfa crop is only 50 million tons.
And at this same time, we've had what's happened with the export market.
Yeah.
That has been very slow.
It's been rough. Absolutely.
And so what we've really are witnessing right now is the perfect storm, so to speak.
Oof. All the other feedstuffs are getting cheap right alongside of hay, right?
Right.
And things like almond hulls and canola meal and soybean meal and corn silage tend to be a little more consistent than hay. And it just makes it harder to keep it in the ration.
Yes. However, I've seen these markets completely flip so many times throughout my 48 years in the industry, John. And so I think that that's really something that I personally, I believe that we're going to see that again very soon. I think that even though that the demand is lower, we're going to start to see a difference in the supply. Farmers are really good at adaptation, right? And so we're going to grow what is profiting us. And if something's not profiting us, then obviously we're going to switch to a different crop. And there are some ranches that just grow what they grow, right? I know cotton farmers that no matter what the price is, whether it's $1.15 or 50 cents, they're going to grow cotton because that's just what they like to grow. And I also know the same thing about hay farmers. Some guys are just going to grow hay. It's what they're set up for, and it's what we're going to do. However, the majority of we could call floaters that
that'll come in and out of different crops.
Exactly. Yep. They are going to bail on this crop, and no pun intended.
Not make bales. They're going to leave it.
Exactly. They're gonna find something else, and they're gonna find whatever that key is for their door that they're trying to open, and that's going to leave space in the market. And all it takes is for, like we said, these other sources of protein to increase. And at that point, then hay does become more desirable. And hopefully we can see that number rise back up and at least above 5 pounds. That would be great. I'm sure that the average definitely is below that right now, at least in our area. This is an ever-changing market, right?
Absolutely.
So if there's any hope to our hay community, it would be that we know it is going to come back around again. I've seen it too many times. However, it has been pretty wild that in the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen 2 different occasions of hay being as low as what it was when I graduated high school in 1994. We're seeing those same prices, right? When we're delivering dry cow hay for $130 a ton, like we did just a few years ago, right before the last spike, everybody thought, well, the price is never going to come up again. And then it went higher than anybody ever imagined. Now, of course, there was COVID. There were a lot of different features to that climb, but we don't know what the future holds. And if you watch any market, we see these hills and valleys in it, right? And so we're definitely in a valley right now, but we know it is going to come back. Some people will weather the storm. Others will, again, just find something else to grow in the meantime. So,
do you foresee this turn in the market driving further consolidation amongst hay producers, amongst dairy producers, farms getting bigger, more acres managed by fewer people?
Absolutely. And that's something that I am fearful of. We need small business more than ever in our country right now. And I actually feel like that's got a lot of momentum right now. I think that our society is really driven to support the small businessmen right now more than ever. We're seeing the effects of all the large businesses, everything from Walmart to Amazon, and what that has done. It's made some things cheaper, but it's also made other things much more difficult to have access to. We're starting to feel that. I think that we're never going to erase the small farmer, but
it gets harder every day.
The harder that it gets, the more space that we develop for larger farms to be able to come in and buy smaller farms out. And we are seeing that as well, especially in the dairy industry.
Yeah. One of my observations is to be a contemporary farmer, you have to have a breadth and depth of skill sets that traditionally small farmers have not had to have.
Exactly.
And I'm just thinking about, labor regulations. I know Washington and California are in a competition. Well, Oregon's in there too, to see who can have the most liberal labor regulations. And I don't mean that particularly bad or good in any way, one way or the other, except that it takes a lot of time to manage those regulations.
Yes.
And that just incentivizes you to double your acres and hire somebody to do the labor stuff for you.
Yes. I think that really what it comes down to is the difference in the survival of small businessmen is that now more than ever, it's tracking your numbers. Numbers have always been an important part of business.
Preach it.
Beginning of business, right? But
preach.
But now it's more important than ever. More important than ever.
Yeah.
And that is really what has helped our business through some very tough times that we were going through 2 years ago. That's when I found our mutual friend, Jesse Bounds, to be really a incredible source of knowledge that has helped pull us through. So it's programs that like his that are helping people in his program, the 10-4 coaching, to really get out and dial in your numbers, because that's going to be the difference. And I believe that the small farmer has just as good of chance as the large farmer in this current state that our economy is in right now. But the biggest difference that I think that they might have is just having more resources to track numbers and larger teams. And so I think that that's really what our small businessmen need to focus on, is carving out that time, whether it's to just do the numbers that you know how to do, or if you don't, to go out and find out how to do them yourself so that you can be in control of your situation.
So let's talk about teams.
Yes.
I'm with you 100% on everything you've said. Let's talk about teams. What do you mean by building a team? Or rather, who's on your team? Maybe that's a different way to ask that.
Yes, I know. No, building the team is what is definitely, you hit the nail on the head right there. I go back to my experience of coaching youth sports for 15 years. The biggest thing that I learned about coaching youth sports is placing the right person in the right position. That's key. Not every one of the kids on the ball field is going to be a first baseman, and not every one of them is going to be a catcher. You have to find everybody's special techniques, and you have to actually put effort into that, into developing that. And so sometimes someone might not appear to be a certain position, but the ability to place people in the right position and to delegate. We have to give up things that we don't have time for. And that's something that so many people fall to the wayside because they're trying to do everything themselves. And so that's a big part of what we discuss a lot in Jesse's program is delegation. That just gives everybody just a huge advantage. And one way that I've done that is I've let go of my team management, right? So all of my drivers, my dispatching, the maintenance, we hired a full-time mechanic a year and a half ago rather than just having some people that can do it. So placing people in full-time positions has really helped out. We've also got, we've placed an individual that's been with us for over 10 years, and he really knew the ins and outs, and we placed him as that team leader, and he was the right person for the job. He's got the right way of leading. We've worked with him extensively on leadership, and now I'm able to go out and do other things and focus on other areas of my business because of that. Things like this today that I would have never have had the time to do or carved out the time to do 3 or 4 years ago. And so I think that that's exactly what we have to do with our finances as well. If you're trying to irrigate your crops and run your swather and your baler and your harrow bed and all of these things that are taking you outside of the office and you're not filling that gap, it really takes a large effect because we're so good at just putting out the immediate fire that's right in front of us. Right. And there's always 100 of them that every second that needs to be tended to. And so, again, what we discuss in 10-4 coaching is that we think about, well, how much will that cost, right, to put somebody in that position or to hire a bookkeeper? But the right way to look at it is, what is it costing you not to do that?
Oh,
and I think that that's a big area that so many people.
Ignorance is really expensive. And
Yes.
as I think about my relatively small haying operation, we did get to a scale where it made sense to pay for a bookkeeper. Not a full-time bookkeeper, but rather a fractional bookkeeper that works for a bookkeeping service in town.
Okay.
And then I went one step further, and that bookkeeping service offers a fractional CFO service where they'll come in and give you a second look on your books.
Yeah.
You don't have to be really big to have that. I mean, you're talking about running 6 trucks. So that's north of $1 million in sales a year, no question. You don't have to be at that scale to have a part-time in-town bookkeeper.
Right.
Somebody to organize what you're doing throughout the year, and then somebody to take a big picture look, maybe sometime around tax season after you close out your books, and make sure that your mental model of your books actually matches what the books are saying.
Yes.
Especially in tight market conditions.
Absolutely. There are so many times, like I feel like in agriculture, probably more than any other area, where someone might be told that, by their accountant at the end of the year after they run their taxes that they made $400,000. Mm-hmm. And then they'll look back and say, well, then where did it go? Right.
Yeah.
And they don't really know.
Where's the cash?
Exactly.
It is possible to make money on a balance sheet and lose it on the statement of cash flows. 100%.
Absolutely. So I use the metaphor of it's as if we're out trying to run a marathon with a blindfold on. I mean, that's going to be pretty difficult to do. So we've got to do what we can do to remove that blindfold, to really get in and see what's going on. And if that means hiring somebody to help you with that, then that's a must. And I think that a lot of times people just get put in positions that maybe they're not quite ready for. I've seen that happen a lot as well, where maybe there's a family member that is pushed into that position just because somebody thinks that they're not busy enough. And so they just hand it over. And that can be just as damaging, right, as it not being done at all if it's not somebody who's really qualified to do it. And so that's something that I feel like is extremely important and makes the difference, like we said, during these hard times of a small farm being able to continue on or get swallowed up by a larger company.
Yep, 100%.
Krone tedders and rakes are specially designed for one goal, making the cleanest green hay without causing damage to your field or crop. It's all in the tine design, which gently lift and move your crop while flotation tires lessen compaction. Krone offers the largest selection of models and range of sizes in the world, so you get what works best for your operation. Find your local Krone dealer at krone-northamerica.com.
Okay. Where are you going next? What's on your docket for the future? Is it more trucks? Is it more efficient trading? What does it look like for you?
So over the past 2 years, self-development and business development has been at the forefront of my thoughts every day. And we've done some investing into self-development to learn how we can move our company forward. And I think that that's something that's really helped us out as well. I know that sometimes it takes that time to kind of step back and really ask yourself, why are we doing this? And what do we want to do? And where do we want to go? And that's really what we've been working on. So it's a very exciting time for us here at MMT. I see the main goal being the maximizing of our trading situation. We really want to up the volume in trading. We want to be able to help out more people. And by getting out of our area, I think that we were really kind of in a shrinking box before. Now that we are getting out of our area, we can help out more of our customers that are still here in this area, but we can help find more product from them from out of the area. And so being able to start to network with people out of state, everywhere from California is a pretty large state. So we've got a lot of areas that we had not tapped into before. So we're working with farmers down in Southern California. We're working with farmers in Arizona, multiple areas of Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. And so that's really helping us to find more product and help more customers, and at the same time help more farmers to get rid of their product. And that's really what our focus is right now. Another area that I'd really like to develop is to be able to help out small businesses in a number of ways. And one of those is to kind of talk about some of these challenges that we've talked about here today, the generational succession, the planning on how to move forward. And that's something that we're getting ready to really launch into another direction over these next couple of months and get some things going in that area. So really, it's just to be able to help out more people. I've always said that when your goal is to help people, nothing can stop you. That's the ball that we're going to grab and run with here. I've got 2 sons that are very much a large part of our company here. Zachary is 22 and Ryder is 16. Zach's on his senior year of Fresno State, majoring in ag business. And Ryder is, just finishing up with high school right now, and then has plans to go to a JC that has a ranching program. So he's our fabricator. Does a lot of mechanic work on the trucks and the majority of the fabrication. And so that's really kind of his specialty. And again, that's here what I was talking about, finding people's specialties. My oldest is really the working into the number crunching side of the business and helping us out a lot there. And just, again, team management as well. And it's just been a really exciting time. It's to have that next generation coming up behind you. It's very driving and motivating, and just kind of helps those days when everything's just kind of hard and you have that push behind you. It's really, it's great on so many levels. I can't really put it all into words, but I've waited a long time for this. I've waited until, I know you mentioned earlier that you have a very young one. Yes. And it seems like those days were yesterday, but gosh, also it seems like it's been a really long time to get them to where they are. And so it's just a really exciting time to be able to develop this third generation of the business here at MMT. It's something that I know it's very difficult to do. I know that the stats on any small business, and probably even less in agriculture, is about 12% is what actually makes it to the third generation. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that we want to be included in.
Ah, wonderful. What a positive note. Do you have any closing thoughts here?
I just want to say that I have always observed these hay markets. I've made a life out of it. I love it. I love the hay industry. I love the dairy industry as well. And it's really my goal to just help out both the dairyman and the farmer to understand what the markets are and how they are the most valuable out in this industry, and where to find value at. And so that's really what I'm excited to bring to the table here in the future.
Well, maybe there's some foreshadowing going on here. I hope to have you back regularly to have discussions around the California alfalfa market. If you had to give a projection for 2025 and you were talking to a hay farmer, would you say it's going to be better or worse than 24?
I definitely feel like it's going to be better. We're not going to see as large of a jump as maybe what we expect, but I do see markets already reacting, and they have been. They have been for 5 or 6 months already. It's been a very slow increase, but we have seen them increase, and I do expect, my personal opinion is that they will continue to increase and that we're going to see numbers. It's hard to throw an exact number out there, but let's just say that we are going to see some increases that we're all going to be happy with, and hopefully will be enough to continue to make it worth it. Because the last couple of years have been tough, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've been tough on both ends. The dairies, a lot of times I think that the dairymen and the farmers, that sometimes there can be a wall in between them. It can be tough for them to see what the other one's going through. But I assure you that having the view in the middle that I have, it's very rarely as green as what the other ones think it is on the other side, right?
Yeah. Right.
The dairymen are really struggling. No, I don't know any dairyman that wants to take advantage of a farmer or feels like it's his turn to, have the higher seat. We all want to work together, and that's, again, that's really what I want to focus on, is being able to help to inform everybody and to understand what these markets are and what's driving them.
Okay. Now, we hear a lot about tariffs. Coming from Trump, there's no secrets here. We hear a lot about trade imbalances. We hear a lot about inflation reduction and interest rates and all of these things. Where is that playing into the hay industry in your neck of the woods?
Well, I would say that without a doubt that the interest rates would be the biggest player in a change in everybody's markets that are tuned into this podcast. The interest rates are going to, when they drop, are going to allow our consumers of hay to be able to expand their operations, add in more cattle. It's funny that you brought up that 1.7 million of milk cows and how that's a 500,000 deficit from the year before. We've all just went through.
Sorry, 5,000 deficit, but yeah.
5,000. Sorry, that we've all just went through this bird flu situation, and that has affected our dairy industry here more than what a lot of people understand. And so, not only has the cattle price rose because there was already, with the high beef prices, there was already a lack of replacement heifers coming into the market. And now it's so hard for a dairyman to go out and replace those cattle with what the interest rate is as well. And so, there may be some sources out there of cattle replacements, but with the interest rates being so high, it's just really making it difficult for them. And again, on the farmer side as well, I know that there's traveling down south and in Arizona, like I have recently, I have seen that there is a lot of ground out there that could be developed, but we might not have the funds available. And to go out and to try and get that funding at what these current interest rates are, it just makes it impossible. And so, yes, the tariffs are going to be an issue, but what I see out there is the interest being the number one factor here.
High interest rates in the U.S. favor in foreign direct investment. That's investors coming to the U.S. to invest in stable assets, because we're still, even if we don't have a good economy, we're still the prettiest house in an ugly neighborhood.
Yes.
And that drives the strength of the dollar, and a strong dollar is rough on ag.
Yeah.
Every day of the week.
It is. As backwards as that might sound to a lot of people, that's the fact.
Oh, strong dollar is just terrible for ag. This is where we could get a little spicy and say something like, it just makes it easier to buy cheap junk from China instead of making it here and then exporting it. A weak dollar is actually what we want if we want to export products.
Right.
So maybe I said something controversial enough that we'll get some hate mail. I haven't actually got any of that on the podcast yet, but that might do it.
Well, hopefully I'm not the one that brings the hate mail, but yeah.
Oh, I have a thick skin. It's okay. Oh, boy. Well, Mark, it's been wonderful visiting with you. I look forward to having you back so we can continue these conversations around, hay markets and trends, and particularly in the desert Southwest.
Absolutely. I look forward to that, John. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to Krone for sponsoring the podcast here. Thank you to Nick at Palmieri Sound for doing all of our audio editing. And thank you to Jessica Palmieri for doing all of our social media coordination.